The arrival of a new year has been a reason for people to reflect and change themselves, to live out a new and improved version of life, to graduate from school, get a job, or even start a business. However, that was all changed when a self-quarantine order was issued to help combat the spread of COVID-19. My name is Brian Steinmetz, and today I'd like to persuade you all to follow the quarantine order, not only for your own safety, but for the safety of those around you. On January 6, 2020, the CDC announced COVID-19 to be a threat level 2, in which extra precautions are needed to be taken when traveling in and out of the country. However, this was all turned upside down on January 21st, when the first case in the US was announced. First, I'd like to inform you on the gravity of the situation. Secondly, I will state the effects of not staying inside. And lastly, I will share how all of us can do our part in helping combat the spread of the virus. Let's move on to how serious COVID-19, better well known as coronavirus, has become over time. Before COVID, people often would greet each other with handshakes and hugs. Friends would casually share drinks and even sometimes lick the same ice cream. However, despite all the warnings preceding this virus, the lack of preparation has caused California to be one of the most affected states in accordance to the virus. According to the New York Times, around 118,000 people a week are declared to have the case of COVID-19. According to Time magazine, COVID is transmitted through sneezing, coughing, as well as physical contact with somebody who could potentially be infected. However, despite these guidelines suggested by the WHO and CDC, people are still getting infected. Why? Many are rejecting the health guidelines put in place. People are refusing to wear masks and still going out and meeting in groups of people of numbers larger than 10. In fact, many people go as far as to protest the stay-at-home order, as well as protesting wearing masks. Now that I've shared the sincerity of the virus, I would like to state problems associated with not following quarantine. The reason for wearing masks isn't so that way you don't get sick. It's to make sure you don't potentially transmit the virus to someone else, because you don't know whether or not you're holding on to the virus unless you've passed a 14-day period in which you start showing symptoms. However, before that, the virus can still be transmitted even though you are unaware you are potentially holding the virus. Another issue in California is that many people in our state live in multi-generational homes. Therefore, if anyone who lives in the same home as these people living with grandma and grandpa, if any of them contracts the virus, they could potentially spread it to their grandparents, causing them to get infected, in which this has a very high mortality rate with those between the ages of 30 and 79. Not to mention, people who have survived serious illnesses such as cancer can also be seriously affected by the virus, as their immune system is not as good as someone who's potentially healthier. I can personally relate to this, as my grandfather, as well as someone who does my taxes, has come out with the fact that they have been diagnosed with the case of COVID-19. It's very real for me, and it should be very real for those around you. Even though if no one you know has been affected yet, I'm telling you that there's people around you who know somebody who's struggling to survive. By not respecting the quarantine order, you could potentially cost someone else their life. Whether they are old or young, COVID-19 is something to be cautious and wary about. Now that I've explained problems associated with not following the stay-at-home order, I will now state what we can do to stop the spread of this virus. Firstly, if you have plans to go outside, please make sure you're wearing a mask. Like I said earlier, you have no idea whether or not you're holding on to the virus and can potentially give it to someone else. So the best way of making sure that you don't transmit this virus to someone else is by wearing your mask. Even when you sneeze, even when you cough, it's maintaining the germs within yourself. You're not handing it on to anyone else. Another thing, make sure you're regularly washing your hands. especially if you're coming back from the grocery store to pick up food for the week. Make sure that you're washing your hands regardless of what you touch, because you don't know if somebody who's carrying the virus potentially touched the same orange or the same apple or whatever it was that you did. Also, make sure that you're still maintaining that 6-foot distance between you and other people. Even in those tight spaces, sometimes it's better just to wait till someone's passed by in order for you to go into the same aisle to get what you need. Avoid all physical contact and avoid being in rooms of more than 10 people, as has been recommended by the WHO and the CDC. And also, if you plan on engaging in any of the protests going on right now, please, I implore you to make sure that you're wearing masks, as it is for not only your own safety, but for the safety of others. Today, I stated the growing danger of COVID, then proceeded to explain issues getting in the way of flattening the curve. Lastly, I shared some tips as to how we can all do our part in making sure that this virus doesn't spread to anyone else. And all in all, I hope everybody's staying safe and that everyone's following the guidelines, as it's not just for your own safety, but for the safety of those around you. And if you don't do it for you, please just do it for someone else. Thank you for your time.